Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thanks for stopping by. I'll be away for a few days in London. I'm looking forward to that, and hence the way I'm dressed for the flight. Thanks once again for stopping by. I'm very much looking forward to hosting Eric Solheim of UNEP at Mindspeak on the 27th of January. Take a look at this little teaser we put together. I went to visit his office yesterday and speak with him and his team, and we just sort of had a little conversation about the Mindspeak and his thoughts about these issues. Eric is a very distinguished individual, extensive career focusing on the environment, development and government and international organizations. Was elected to become Executive Director of the UNEP Environment Programme on May 13, 2016. Prior to joining UNEP, Solheim was the Chairman of the Development Assistance Committee of the OECD. As head of the DAC, which is the main body of the world's development donors, Solheim emphasized the role of the private sector and tax and development finance, spearheading the Sustainable Development Investment Partnership and the Addis Tax Initiative. Solheim also focused on the need to channel more aid to least developed countries and bring new members and partners to the DAC. From 2007 to 2012, Solheim held a combined portfolio of Norway's Minister of the Environment and International Development, and from 2005 to 2007 served as Minister for International Development. This unique portfolio mixture allowed him to bring a coherent approach to development and the environment. During his time as minister, Norwegian aid reached 1%, the highest in the world. Solheim also put into place the Nature Diversity Act, which many consider to be Norway's most important piece of environmental legislation in the past 100 years. Norwegian Climate and Forest Initiative, UNREDD, Global Coalition to Reduce Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. He's also an experienced peace negotiator, having acted as the main facilitator of the peace process in Sri Lanka from 1998 to 2005. He was describing to me how he met both sides of that. The peace process led to a ceasefire in the Oslo Declaration in 2002, contributed to peace processes in Sudan, Nepal, Myanmar, Burundi. So extremely distinguished. Looking forward to hearing him. He's Time Magazine's Hero of the Environment, an honorary doctorate from Terry University in Delhi, India, written 3 books, holds a degree in History and Social Studies from the University of Oslo. We look forward to that. Macro thoughts, China. There was a report that China may halt purchases of US treasuries, and we saw quite an extraordinary shiver rapidly go through the market. And I said to myself, this is a shot across the bows. It really is. China then said earlier this morning, report on halting or tapering purchases of US treasuries might have quoted a wrong source or be fake news. It says it always diversifies investment in FX assets. One trader asks, did China just give US assets a cheap, valuable lesson on who's in charge? That's from Zero H. And I tend to agree with that. A wild day for US Treasuries. 10-year yield jumped to a near 10-month high, near 2.6%, before ending unchanged on the day at 2.55%. Take you back to September 2016, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. A lot of risk calculations are based on value at risk. Essentially, you overlay a volatility measure over the portfolio. You calculate how much money is on the line. Central banks have suppressed volatility, therefore, in real terms, investors are now holding bigger positions at these currently artificially suppressed levels, suppressed yield levels. If volatility spikes, positions are going to be reduced en masse. Or to put it another way, and to borrow the lyrics from the Eagles Hotel California, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. And she said, we are all just prisoners here of our own device. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax, said the nightman. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. That was September 2016. So what is clear is that we're at the fag end of this party, and that fag end of that party went on and on and on and on, but now has ended. US yield curve steepens as China reportedly considers slowing or halting Treasury's purchases. So really a very noticeable intersection between geopolitical and financial power, a bit of muscle flexing. And if they really flex their muscles, we're going to see some really huge and discontinuous moves. 13th of November, I said I predict the Brent crude market has reprices further to run, and we would see Brent crude trade above $70 a barrel. Citi is now saying Trump and war could help drive oil to $80. Many of these uncertainties have significant consequences for commodities. It is not a surprise that our list of potential wildcard events in the year ahead retains a focus on the United States. However, the most wide-ranging systemic risk to commodities this year could be President Trump disturbing the political world order, Citigroup said. Home thoughts, look at this photograph from Dr. Ahmed Kalabi. Clear view of Mount Kilimanjaro this morning is seen from the Kenyan side. I too took a photograph of Mount Kilimanjaro from the Mombasa-Nairobi road. Have a look. And one from 35,000 feet on a Kenya Airways flight. Take a look at that as well. Puigdemont seeks to preside over Catalonia via Skype, says the Financial Times. Here, President Trump is seen welcoming the press to a cabinet meeting with a wry welcome back to the studio. President Trump says he plans to take a strong look at the libel laws. You can't say things that are knowingly false, and be able to smile as money pours into your bank account. President Trump, who said Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States and Ted Cruz's father was behind JFK's assassination, says laws should make it harder to say things that are false. That's from Advisor. Let's move on to the currency markets. Let me just get that up here. Euro dollar 119.34. We bounced as high as 120.10. Dollar index 92.42. Japanese yen 111.70. Swiss franc 0.9801. The pound is at 134.80. The Australian dollar, which has been on quite a roll, 0.7867. India rupee 63.745, South Korean won 1072.17, the Rial 322.81, Egyptian pound 17.7107, and the rand has softened on news that President Zuma is still able to keep his seat, 1243.38. The Japanese yen has had a dynamic move since Friday. When we traded above 113, we're now at 111.70, and this was on the taper that was announced in the Japanese long end. It's a big move. It's probably got a lot further to go. 108 is probably the next objective here. Dollar index, last time I looked, 92.42, 93.50 remains key. We're not yet approaching that. Euro dollar, we've softened up 119.35. Look as if we can go a bit lower here. It's defensive at the moment, but I think it's ahead of a move to 124. Bitcoin plunged amid South Korean clampdown concerns, fueling concern that a government crackdown will erode one of the world's biggest sources of demand for digital currencies. Let's just check where we are now. It's down, it's at 13,717, and the asset class as a whole is down. Bitcoin is too volatile to serve either as a medium of transaction or as a store of value, and this is structural. This is from a research article I found via Citibank. As I said on the 2nd of January, I am no longer bullish Bitcoin. In fact, I am bearish. Have a look at this. A lot of red on the screen for now. Bitcoin, Ether, XRP, etc. from LMT 978. Bitcoin creation is wasteful. Bitcoin security is weak, and it can get worse with quantum computing. That's City again. The poor design means that Bitcoin is likely a bubble. Other cryptocurrencies are likely to take over. Wealth effects of a failure of Bitcoin would be meaningful in Russia, Nigeria, New Zealand, and others. And they've done an analysis of the value of Bitcoin being traded versus the GDP. Kenya ranks quite high there as well. My piece on the 8th of January was about the crypto avocado millennial economy. The most extreme example of this virus-style millennial behavior has been in the cryptocurrency markets. Total market cap of all cryptocurrencies could cross the $1 trillion threshold in the blink of an eye. Bitcoin ramped 1,400% higher in 2017. Ripple up 14-fold in 1 month and 300-fold in the past year. And I said then, this is unprecedented in the size of the multiplier and its velocity with regard to the history of the financial markets ever. Interesting article in the FT, Bitcoin bubble made in millennial heaven. And saying young people like myself with little money to invest, so they're more likely to invest in something that has the potential to see massive returns. They're not having a family to feed or a mortgage to pay, we can take these riskier bets. Then there is, he adds, that other youth obsession, FOMO, or the fear of missing out, which creates classic bubbles. Blockchain fever spreads very quickly. As soon as you hear one friend who's made an amount of money in that space, you're likely to follow. That is absolutely FOMO. Bitcoin is more than 6 times as volatile as the most volatile emerging market currency. A daily 1 standard deviation move in Bitcoin is around 6.7%. Over the same time frame, the most volatile EM foreign exchange has a 1 standard deviation move of just above 1%. Gold is similarly at 1%. Bitcoin is more than 6 times as volatile as the most volatile EM currency. That's why I wrote that piece in November, Bitcoin, wow, what a ride. Largest Bitcoin holdings as a percent of GDP are in Russia, 5%, followed by New Zealand and Nigeria, 4%, Ukraine, Kenya, South Africa, UK, and Colombia. If Bitcoin were to flop, those countries would already experience a meaningful negative wealth effect. Guess who's back? Shares of Kodak explode, up 220% in 2 days as the company founded in 1888 goes for blockchain. Introduces Kodak coin. This is classic bubble territory. Gold, 1318 trading. We've had a good recovery. It's now obvious that the Chinese have been buying quite a bit. Let's move on to Africa. Kenneth Roth, Congo President Kabila's strategy. 1, promise to step down as required. 2, do nothing to keep the promise. 3, have protesters who object shot. 4, use that time to keep the corrupt cash coming. And I said there is a threshold with regard to 3, have protesters who object shot, and Kabila is carefully staying below that threshold. I went back to that piece about the revolutionary contingent attaining its ideal form, not in its place of production, but in the street. This is Paul Virilio in Speed and Politics, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor machine of attack. In other words, a producer of speed. As we look around the world today, we can see a battle for the street, from the streets of Bujumbura to the streets of Baltimore. In November last year, I wrote about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa and concluded we need to ask ourselves how many people an incumbent can shoot stone cold dead. 100, 1,000, 10,000. And so this is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. So far, Kabila has managed to stay below that. The DR Congo is preparing to more than double attacks on 2/3 of the global cobalt supply, increasing the cost of the critical battery metal just as the world begins to embrace electric vehicles. Congo is the world's biggest cobalt producer, will increase the royalty miners pay on exports of the metal to 5% from 2% if it opts to categorize cobalt as a strategic substance. World Bank issued their Global Economic Prospects report, forecasting a growth of 5.5% in Kenya, Nigeria 2.5%, South Africa 1.5%. Growth in the region is anticipated to pick up to 3.2% in 2018 from 2.4% in 2017. Stronger growth will depend on a firming of commodity prices and implementation of reforms. A drop in commodity prices, steeper than anticipated global interest rate increases, and inadequate efforts to ameliorate debt dynamics would set back economic growth. South Africa is forecast to tick up to 1.1% in 2018 from 0.8% in 2017. Nigeria anticipated to accelerate to 2.5% expansion this year from 1% in the year just ended. South Africa's trade surplus hits a record high of 81 billion rand over the last 12 months, probably the best ever. As a percentage of GDP, it is 1.8% of GDP. This is Renaissance Redcap Man, explaining the recent strength of the rand. South Africa growth in 2017 was upgraded from 0.6 to 0.8 as activity strengthened more than expected in the second half of the year. South African all shares up 0.8%. Dollar versus rand softened on news that President Zuma is managing to cling to power. In Sisi's Egypt, it's not enough to simply support his policies or ignore his crimes. Public figures are expected to regurgitate his propaganda. Leaked recordings expose Egypt's most powerful force, the Mukhabarat. This is a report in Al Jazeera English, and I thought to myself, how different is it in any other of these Middle Eastern countries? Growth in Nigeria is projected to pick up from 1% in 2017 to 2.5% in 2018 and 2.8% in 2019. Nigerian all share has stormed out of the gates this year. It's up 9.34% since the start of the year. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 4.57% this year. Growth in Angola is projected to rise from 1.2% to 1.6%. They're talking of a successful political transition, signaling the possibility of reforms that can ameliorate the investment climate. I like what I'm seeing in Angola. I wrote about it. Keen on being long on Angolan risk. The devil is in the detail of the execution, and in particular the attempt now to unify the exchange rate, and that's why I'm sort of looking to buy Angolan Eurobonds on any pullback. Among East African countries, Ethiopia is likely to remain the fastest growing economy. Among East African countries, Ethiopia is the fastest growing economy, but growth is expected to soften as it takes measures to stabilize government debt. Growth is expected to recover in Kenya as inflation eases, and to firm in Tanzania on strengthening investment growth. Ethiopia is battling with this need to change direction, and that might prove additional pressure on the economy. Ms. Shaka said she would present the final report in Brussels on Wednesday. It is only the third time in approximately 175 such EU election missions that observers have not returned to the host country to deliver their conclusions when they wanted to. John Githonga, a prominent civil society leader and former government anti-corruption czar, said the quality of this election has been ripped to shreds, and the government, which is facing a legitimacy crisis, is concerned about its credibility being on the line. As I said, I think we've seen a fait accompli with respect to the election. I don't see, this is obviously a bit of noise, but I think we've now had a guillotine. Interesting, climate change in Kenya. Citizens say negative changes in weather are affecting their lives in the country. This is Afrobarometer. And Carolyn Logan is saying 65% in Kenya have heard of it and could answer questions about it. It's interesting. And Nairobi all shares up 1.5% this year. and the NSE 20 is up 0.25% this year. I'm off and I'll be back a week on Monday, and I appreciate the fact that you do stop by.